Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm very well.
Fantastic. I was just checking my emails to see whether you were joining us or not, but then you arrived just as I
Cool.
started checking. So,
Of course.
Yeah, sure. So good to meet you, Nick. I actually saw you on stage in Stockholm Fintech Festival. I was also speaking there in a later session, but I didn't get a chance to talk to you there. But happy to see that we were able to arrange this podcast interview. So
Good. Yeah, well, we're trying to get the word out about engines. So
yeah, well, we have a few thousand enthusiastic listeners, and we've been running this for how long now, Paul? 3 years?
3 years. We're now on season 7.
Yeah. So we are persistent, if nothing else. Good. All right. So let's get to it. So small silence, then a clap, and then I'll start rambling, and then we will bring you in.
Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Paul Krogdahl and Ville Sointu. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello and welcome back to Fintech Daydreaming. My name is Ville Sointu and I will be your host for today's episode, which is going to be all about the familiar topics that we are used to talking here: embedded finance, banking as a service, all the good things that we love and cherish here on the podcast. But of course, I'm not alone. I'm here with my co-pilot, dear friend Paul. So how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Villa. Yes, life is as life always is. Looking forward to another interesting discussion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As we know, we're in the middle of the event season right now, and there's a lot of events happening. I think we're gonna do like 4 different events on consecutive weeks. I just recently came back from Barcelona, and a lot of people got sick, actually in Barcelona, and myself included. But it is what it is. The people are meeting each other again, and it comes with the territory, I suppose, that you have to have a bit of a flu every now and then. So if my voice sounds a little bit lower than usual, that's why I'm still recovering from the flu a bit. But good. Enough about us. Let's bring our guest in, because again, the podcast is only a podcast if we do have a proper guest to talk about actual banking topics as well. Our guest today is Nick, who is the Chief Commercial Officer for Starling Engine. But instead of me trying to explain who Nick is and what he does, I'll let him do it by himself. So Nick, welcome. How are you? And please introduce yourself.
thank you. Yeah, I'm good. I'm Nick Drewett. I work for Engine by Starling, which is the software platform business set up by Starling Bank. I've been with the bank 6 months now. Before that, I was a consulting partner at IBM for many years.
All right. So,
Yeah, so full disclosure, Nick and I know each other from his days at IBM, but I was sort of trying to keep that a bit quiet.
well, you did it. You just told it. Okay. Promise not to tell anyone. Okay. Good.
No.
So again, good to meet you, Nick. Starling Bank and Starling Engine have been headline level things in the fintech space, at least for the past couple of months, at least. So again, really looking forward to hearing the story. But before we get to all the fintech goodness, we do have a tradition on the podcast, which our listeners have told us they appreciate. I don't know if they're lying to us, but I hope not. And that tradition, of course, is that we ask our guests to have a fintech joke to share with the audience. So, Nick, do you have a joke that is somehow loosely related to banking and fintech?
I do. It's a bit of a dad joke.
Just the way we like it.
We like dad jokes. They're the best.
Yes, it's my speciality. I'll go for it. So, why are Irish bank so successful?
Don't know.
No
Because
idea.
their capital is Dublin.
All right, congratulations, Nick. I think you hit the tone perfectly on the types of jokes that we love here on the podcast. So good job there. All right, how do we build on that? Okay, so let's just go for it. I do have one maybe a bit of a new question to you, which is that I do have to ask: Starling engine. Starling engine. If you actually Google Starling engine, the first thing you get as a result is the Starling engine. Is this a coincidence or not?
Yeah, no, that's just a coincidence. Yeah, the Starling engine is interesting, by the way. Yeah, that's not a bad association.
No, yeah, exactly.
Not intentional at all. And that's
because that's what I thought as well.
Yeah, that's a typo. So Starling, Starling set up Engine 12 months ago. So Engine's a brand that we created for the purposes of selling the software platform that Starling Bank built to other banks around the world. So yeah, we think Engine works.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love the association that you get the Starling engine, which is an interesting piece of engineering for sure. And I'm sure, as we're going to learn, so is Starling engine. But let's take a step back a little bit and talk a little bit about what is actually the background for Starling engine, even before you started 12 months ago. So maybe start briefly from Starling Bank. So what is Starling Bank, and then how is Starling engine related to Starling Bank?
Sure. So Starling Bank was set up by Anne Bowden in 2014. And before that, she was COO at AIB, where I got to know her. And she had the idea that modern technology created an opportunity to massively improve banking, to simplify it, make it fairer, make it cheaper, and more transparent and just easier. So she spent, and she's written about it in her book, which is a great book. It's a good read, which I recommend. But I won't tell the whole story. But basically, the banking license was awarded in 2016 after she'd successfully raised some funding and had been through the whole story of forming the team that's still there today that built the platform. Launched in 2017, and essentially since 2019, Starling Bank as a bank has topped the CMA customer service annual survey, which is very pleasing. It's won best current account for like 5 years running, has grown to 3 million retail customers and 500,000 business accounts. So it's a very successful digital bank.
Just for clarity for our listeners, I mean, Starling Bank started off in the UK for the UK market, right? And I assume predominantly still serves the UK market as a bank.
Yes. So, and 12 months ago, previously the plan was to expand as a bank across Europe. And Starling was going for a European banking license through Dublin, which was proceeding to plan. But the decision was made 12 months ago that there was probably a better strategy for international growth, which was to lead with the technology platform and partner with banks around the world to allow them to leverage what's been built and re-platform or launch digital banking propositions in their country, simply because it takes time. It would have taken time for Starling Bank to go country by country and build trust and brand in every country. So that's where Engine came in. We decided a very clear change of strategy. We'll keep the bank as a bank in the UK and lead with the platform everywhere else.
So just for simple clarification, do you see yourselves then more in the banking as a platform space, similar to Mambu and Thought Machine and others, or do you see yourself more in a banking as a service space like SEBX and some of the other sort of licensed providers?
Well, I mean, so we don't have any aspirations to get banking licenses outside the UK, and therefore we could only offer banking as a service in the UK,
Yeah.
which is what we do. So we have various clients that run on the same instance as Starling Bank, access our payment rails, and so on. But the engine proposition is different. It's software as a service. We want to deploy our software. It's cloud native, so it would be setting up dedicated instances for banks who want to take advantage of what's been built. And so yes, more akin to Mambu than Thought Machine.
Yeah, that's interesting. I might recollect wrong, but wasn't Starling Bank expanding to Germany? Maybe this was before the strategy changed, or
yeah. So the plan, I think the stated plan on the annual report or the blog post was we'd start. The first overseas bank would be Ireland, and that would be followed by banks across Europe, including Germany.
Okay. And now it's defined as a software as a service play rather than extending the banking license. Okay, got it.
That's right. So in the future, Starling will become an organization. I mean, it has always been a technology company that has happened to build a bank. The bank has been built by some very talented engineers. So that's in the DNA of the organization. So it will be a technology company that provides the software to banks around the world and happens to run a UK bank, and a very successful one.
So, I mean, is it purely technology, or are you also bringing in something else? I mean, obviously, Starling Bank has a lot of knowledge about how to build a digital proposition, given the success Starling Bank had in the UK. So, do you bring more than the software as a service, or is it just really the technology that you bring in?
Yes, I mean, so one of the things that we can do is not only provide the software and the documentation and say off you go, do what you like with this, and if you want to answer any questions on the documentation, let us know. It's much more of a partnership because we can set up sessions with people who use it in anger, who've got the real world experience of using the platform. And sometimes technology is not the answer. In fact, if you look at Starling Bank as a bank, one of the things that has made it successful is that it's not been obsessive about technology and the customer proposition. In fact, it has a very human touch. In the call center in particular, there's no IVR or recorded messages. You get straight through to an agent who will spend as long as it takes to resolve a customer problem. And so we want to speak to customers. And so it's an interesting inversion of what people expect from a digital bank, where technology isn't the be all and end all. So yes, in implementations, we share that expertise and experience, and because, as I say, sometimes the answer isn't technology. But I would add, we don't have any aspirations to become a services or a consulting organization. We are a technology company. We want to sell the software and help other banks be successful with it.
Right. So you won't run it on a day-to-day basis, but you are bringing in more than the technology. Got it. So as far as the software itself goes, I mean, is it really like, if you look at what Starling Bank does today in the UK, you can take that and then you can say you could have that as a technology platform. Is that one-to-one, or is the Starling engine something more or perhaps less than what Starling Bank's platform is?
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be. It's an interesting question because I think this gets to the heart of the difference between between engine and alternative options. Because Starling Bank runs, engine is a complete set of services to run a bank. The bank runs essentially on the one system, which gives it huge advantages in terms of cost and customer service, for reasons that I can go into. But it solves the problem of complexity. But of course, it's all, because it's modern, it's all API'd. So it's, if you like, decomposable. You can unplug things if you want. You cannot mortgage your future to our organization. You have the flexibility of plugging in other components if you like. So it's incidentally, I'm trying to introduce the word decomposable architecture into the vernacular, but for some reason, limited success.
Well, it would be a fantastic sort of twist on the marketing of composable banking that Mambu has been running around with for years, right? So,
well, yes, and look, and Mambu's done a fantastic job of creating a market for cloud-native banking software, which I think is absolutely the future. But there's still a lot of fear and an uncertainty about moving to the cloud and what that means. I think they've done a great job, but Engine is different. It's not just the ledger; it's the whole platform, and so you don't have to plug in other components and have a big build phase to get to launch.
So that's quite interesting. So from a Starling Engine perspective, it's a full end-to-end capability. So that means onboarding, KYC, AML, payments, ledger, product engine, product catalog, so on and so forth. It's everything in one box.
Yeah, there's even a card processing system that the team built cloud native in-house. The call center capability and messaging is built in-house, embedded into the platform. There is one thing when people see it, it all makes sense, is when they see the management portal, which is if you imagine a pane of glass through which bank employees do their work. So imagine a pane of glass with a screen with 40 tabs or so.
Mm-hmm.
Collections, treasury, onboarding, fraud disputes, and so on. And each of those tabs has got sub-tabs for people to do their work, or the senior management of that department to look at the MI in real time. Everything that bank colleagues do is done through that system. Yes, you've got ancillary systems, the accounting, general ledger, and HR, and so on. But the business of running the bank is conducted through that one screen, and it accesses the same APIs as the mobile app, and accesses which surface all the relevant data in the right place and the right way to colleagues so that they can make decisions. And that, I think, when seasoned bank executives see that, it really begins to make sense. Okay, it is one system. It solves the problem of complexity in a very real and operational way. That's a real selling point.
So we already established that your target customers are effectively banks, so licensed banks, and I suppose that means banks globally as well, or do you have focus markets?
Well, look, I mean, the plans for the bank or the organization are to IPO at some point. So we've still got all the original investors. And what would be great is to have a good cross-section of representative proof points of banks or other organizations, telcos, using our platform to launch digital propositions or to re-platform. So we want greenfield bank launches, we want re-platforming examples, we want different countries and regulatory jurisdictions, we want banks, non-banks. That would be wonderful to have a good representative cross-section, rather than hem ourselves in with one sort of specific target market.
But I'm assuming from a banking perspective, you're focusing predominantly on retail banking, or is it, complete from retail to SME to large corporate to complex corporate lending and banking capabilities?
So it is business banking. So Starling Bank is a very successful business bank in the UK. In the UK, has 8 to 9% of the UK SME market, and that's thanks to the successful award of the Williams and Glyn Capability and Innovation Fund, where Starling secured a £100 million grant that was used to create the business banking capability. But yes, it's what Starling Bank does at the moment is very much it's not the complex end of corporates. It's not trade finance and leasing and so on. But full business bank onboarding, and the one of the joys of having been able to start from scratch and build something cloud native is the team was able to rethink or come up with a modern data model and account structure that now, if you look at Starling Bank, what Starling Bank does is it uses that capability, that flexibility for features like saving spaces, virtual cards attached to a space rather than to an account. You can put your direct debits and standing orders against one subspace. You can set up child accounts. At the beginning of the pandemic, we launched a facility where you could have a COVID space. You could set up a spending limit and give a card to a neighbour so that they could do your grocery shopping on a space up to the limit on that space. But so that's how Starling Bank uses that flexibility, and you can imagine different ways that could be used for power of attorney and safeguarding type propositions. But similarly, if you're a private bank, for example, not that Starling Bank is, you could use that functionality in different ways, whether it's giving read-only access to your investment advisor or accountant, through to your yacht crew having a card. There's all sorts of new propositions you can launch with that kind of capability. And in business banking, you can set up permission cards, and you can do all sorts of helpful things that people with old, rigid structures of accounts and one account, one customer can't do.
Sounds a little bit like virtual account management.
Sorry, Mike?
I said it sounds a little bit like virtual account management, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed. But I want to double down on this, actually, even at the risk of going a little bit nerdy here. But I mean, Starling Bank, again, started as a UK bank and being very successful there, building on a modern platform, reaping the benefits of faster go-to-markets, of building with a smart team from scratch. That's been a fantastic success story. However, when you transform that into a software as a service or a platform strategy, do you see any risks with having this legacy of actually building a bank for UK? Because I mean, all we know is that if you, let's say, talk to an Italian bank, it actually looks a little bit different than a UK bank. There's a lot of different things you need to do differently in different countries due to legacy reasons. Let's say if you want to do house loans or any type of lending, for example. So two questions here, really. What is your strategy in terms of these customizations that you might need to do for different countries and different local requirements? And then number two, do you do those things yourself, or do you expect either the customer or a third party to do these customizations for local markets? And how do you run this custom setup, if you will?
I might have to make notes. That's a
sorry. I did try to warn that this might get nerdy, but the root of the question really is around around the whole scene of what we've seen happening in the traditional core banking market. So if you look at what many of the large core banking vendors are trying to do when they are modernizing cores in different banks, they usually run into this exact issue, which is that local requirements have been embedded in the way these banks work for a long time. And those are partly by local requirements, but also partly by the way banks tend to work. That translates into different requirements for different regions, different countries. And I was wondering, what is the strategy from Starling Engine's perspective to cater for these local requirements?
Yeah, okay. Where to start? So I think, point one, remember that we were going for a European banking license through Dublin. So a lot of the, to the extent that there was engineering work required to be EBA ready, that was largely done by January last year. SEPA integration, other regulatory tweaks. So, the core platform is, EBA ready. And in fact, our first client, we haven't announced it yet, but we do have a first client, happens to be in Eastern Europe. And so we're going through this at the moment. So I think that's point one. It's not just the UK that it was ready for. I think point two, what we believe is that because the platform is a set of configurable APIs and has been done in quite a thoughtful way to allow future flexibility and changes to the products and customer experience, what we're expecting is that the vast majority of those local requirements can be dealt with through an API configuration or through constructing the customer journey. So remember, not as I've told you yet, when you're implementing, when you're building a bank using our platform, one thing we won't do is build your mobile app because we believe that every bank will want to own their own app. They want to own their own customer journeys and voice and so on. But the project of designing and building the propositions, the products, the customer journeys, and so on, will be done bank by bank, and that app will talk to the APIs, and that through APIs to our core platform and core services that should be eminently configurable to accommodate all varieties of journey, product, proposition, and so on. There will be local peculiarities, not necessarily regulatory, might be legal, jurisdictional ones. Garnishments is a good example. Different countries have different approaches to garnishments, and so those the processes of the bank and the journeys have got to accommodate tweaks like that. But we feel that will be dealt with in the app, or a kind of a thin veneer of an orchestration layer, coordinating between the app and the APIs, coordinating the flows. I think the third point is that actually many of the regulatory issues that we have to surmount are probably less to do with the platform itself and more to do with cloud and audit requirements and different approaches to data privacy. Ours is a cloud banking proposition, and so to the extent any country still has an issue with or particular requirements for about data being held outside the country or audit requirements, we'll have to contend with that on a country by country basis, and that means that in practice some countries aren't feasible for us because there isn't an AWS center in that country that and the local regulations wouldn't permit doing it out of country. So I think those are probably the more realistic, or the more common constraints that we'll have to navigate.
So let's take this on a dare I say, almost a test drive. Let's imagine here for a minute. I mean, Ville and I have discussed multiple times that we've worked so long in banking. Why shouldn't we start up the Fintech Daydreaming Bank to initially satisfy the Nordic market? I mean, how would the journey look like if we said, Nick, we really want to do this with Starling Engine. Let's take this journey together. What would that look like?
Yeah, well, step one would be come up with a better brand than Daydreaming.
Yeah, you're probably right on that one, but we've got the brand, so we have to stick with it, right?
I have concerns about the control culture.
Okay.
Fair point. Fair point.
Good point. Yeah, the bank's dead already.
So yeah, what would it take? Well, the long pole in the tent of any implementation projects is building the mobile app.
Yeah.
So and you'll know how long that takes. I mean, let's say 9 to 9, depending on how complex a product set you want to launch. If you want to just launch simple savings, that could be as little as 6 months. If you want to do a fuller fat MVP, 9 to 12 months. And that's a series of sprints to build an app. Then within that timeline, other things that need to be dealt with include integration to domestic payment schemes, integration to accounting and treasury and reg reporting capabilities, integration to any local or particular bureau requirements or credit decisioning. So, those would be the key ones. What you don't have to do is prepare a shopping list of third-party providers for all of the components of the platform, and then think about integrating them all together to build the base platform. So you can focus your energy on thinking about the customer journeys and the customer proposition and creating them in the app.
So, I mean, one of the parts that we would have to go through is like any financial organization, we would need the local authorities to approve that our platform is compliant and approved for us to operate as a bank. Is that something we would have to do, or is that something that you as Starling Engine would help us to do based on the fact that your platform has theoretically already been approved in a jurisdiction?
Well, yeah, I think it depends on the jurisdiction and their attitude. So, if hypothetically, if we were to break America and become an established platform in the States, then other banks and the Fed would take comfort that it's already proven in the US, because that's the way that market works. It's different in different jurisdictions. I think there's probably two answers to the question. One is what will have to be dealt with in the contract with us as a material outsource provider, but which will be all of the things that we have to provide by way of comfort that we're looking after the customer data. We are providing appropriate provisions on termination of the arrangement and steps to migrate to something else. All of those usual provisions will have to be dealt with in the contract, the SLAs and so on. And then I think there's the sort of the less formal answer to the question, which is, well, yes, as I've said before, because we've got people that use this platform in anger, so we can provide a different kind of conversation than if we were just a software company. So we can talk to banks about how we do security and how we manage data privacy in practice. So
you walk the talk.
Yeah, exactly.
So the step, taking us back to the Fintech Daydreaming Bank brand TBD, by the way. So we have to
working brand,
but let's, for argument's sake, stick with that for a moment. Do we have to get a full banking license? You said that you're looking into not only geographical extension, but also the expansion to other types of financial service providers that might involve other types of licenses. So what's your thinking around that? Should we go for an e-money license? Can we do something with just a payment service provider license? What's the what is possible with the Starling engine?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's entirely up to you and the proposition. So yes, the flexibility of the platform, you can, if what you want to launch is a credit card proposition on an embedded basis, then yes, we've got, you don't need the full capability of the platform. We've got the card processor, we've got the core accounting, so you don't need it all. And yes, I can imagine various use cases or customer propositions or businesses that you could build on that basis. And as I said, we would love to have a cross section of different uses for our platform and different proof points.
And what's your business model? How do you charge for these services from your customers? Do we buy a single huge license and then pay that for every year, or what is the high level structure of how you monetize this?
Yeah, we actually, I use the phrase up front that we're looking for banks to partner with who want to take advantage of our technology, and I think we do mean that word partner. That we want to associate ourselves with successful digital banks around the world, and so the commercial model fits with that as well. That it's we want to align our commercial model with the success of that with our customers. So it's essentially, as you would expect, a software as a service. It's a per customer, per major account feature basis with a kind of tiered pricing structure where the bank will benefit from economies of scale.
Yeah, because I mean, as every listener of our podcast knows, me and Paul, we don't have much of a balance sheet on the podcast, so we have to be very conscious of the of how we're gonna set up our new bank. But at least we have the brand almost figured out. So I think we're on there.
Well, we've just had that knocked out of the park there. New brand to be found. But tell me, Nick, do you also bring with you for the engine? Do you bring an ecosystem of partners already integrated and ready to deliver a wider capability?
Yes.
Yeah.
So so whilst it's decomposable in the sense that it's all API, so if you wanted to use something else than the starter platform, you can. But we expect that most people won't want to tackle that as part of MVP launch, because it makes sense to just focus on the important things. But over the years, so when Starling Bank started, there was a fair amount of third-party software in the platform. But over the years, and for different reasons, it's been that footprint has been reduced significantly. And so, for example, GPS was part of the platform for Starling Bank in the early days, and that gave us a significant kickstart before we introduced our own cloud-native card processing system. But all the integrations to GPS are still there. But we could, if a client particularly wanted Marqeta, for example, it wouldn't be too difficult for us to come up with an interface to that. So yes, and our card processor is currently set up to run MasterCard cards, but in the fullness of time, we'll extend that to Visa as well.
Right.
So we have the choice.
All right. So I'm just, still coming back to the partners and the missing pieces. So let's wrap this up in terms of wanting to build the Fintech Daydreaming Bank a little bit. So we need a mobile app basically, and I guess we need some kind of an orchestration system to run that app and distribute the app, and then the CRM would come from Starling, or do I need that separately?
CRM is in the platform. All the customer data is there. All the jobs that bank employees do are conducted through the management portal. That gives them full insight and transparency. You can look at, it pulls together all of the customer data that they need to do their jobs. Starling Bank, I mean, our philosophy has been about making bank fairer and simpler, and easier to do business with. So, it's not been to push propositions at customers. Rather, the focus is on making banking easier for people to do and less intrusive. But to the extent that when you say CRM, you mean insight into customers, and it's all there in the platform.
Right. So it really sounds like you could actually start this almost like a turnkey. Again, you need the front end, but then and of course the local integrations to the national infrastructure in order to run it. But this sounds like a pretty good turnkey solution. Let's turn that around a little bit the other way. So let's say that Fintech Daydreaming Bank is a fantastic success. Of course, it will be. So we want to expand to other countries. So we would then maybe acquire licenses or passport the license within Europe to other countries, and then we would extend the services to many citizens across Europe. Maybe at first, would we serve all of those customers from a single instance of the Starling engine, or would we set up different instances for each country, for example?
Yeah, no, so part of the flexibility of the data model includes the ability to run different banks on the same platform, or so with we ensure there's no kind of data leakage, customer data leakage between the banks. So you could do it. You could even run a bureau service if you wanted to on the same instance in a territory. But you can certainly run multiple banks on the same platform. You have the kind of concept of realms that neatly divides the customer data and the API, and stops manages which APIs are consumed by employees or customers. It's also multi-currency. So if you're a customer of Starling Bank at the moment, you can hold euros and sterling on your same account. But behind the scenes, it's set up to do, well, I mean, we've got, as a bank employee, I could put 27 currencies on my account. Because in terms of the account structure, you could have limitless if you wanted.
So sounds like our expansion as the Fintech Daydreaming Bank would be in good hands, at least inside Europe.
Yeah,
but
as long as all employees speak English.
That's actually a good point, because especially in banking, that might not always be true.
There might need to be some translation of certain screens, but
yeah.
Logically, it can be done.
That's a good clarification for sure. The next step, of course, I mean, now that we covered the plans for global domination for our bank, where do you see Starling Engine and perhaps Starling Bank in the next 5 to 10 years? We already talked about the expansion to maybe other types of financial service providers. You looking into global expansion as well to different geographies. But from your perspective, where you stand today and knowing what you know, where do you see yourselves in 5 years, and then a little bit longer to the future, so 10 or maybe even 20 years?
So, yeah, it's an interesting, I mean, who knows?
No one knows, but it's a good guess, right?
let's speculate. So that there's, Anne has gone on record saying there's an intention or aspiration to IPO at some point. There are no current firm plans, but that's something that will probably have happened in 5 to 10 years' time. We don't need to raise more money. The bank is profitable, which is one of the distinguishing features of Engine, actually, as a proposition. A lot of banks who are thinking about replatforming, if they want to go cloud native, and at the moment it would be difficult not to go cloud native, because it would beg the question, why are you implementing something that isn't very modern? But it's unusual to find a cloud native, an organization that has built a modern banking platform that is also substantial and profitable and has a lot of surplus capital. So we're robust as an organization. I think from an Engine point of view, Starling Bank, the plan is to keep it in the UK, and in the UK it will continue to grow and expand the product offering and continue to be successful, I'm sure. From an Engine perspective, I think my aspiration is that Engine will be bigger than the bank, and in 5 to 10 years we'll have a nice global footprint. We'll have sales teams and dare I say, even offices in countries around the world, and yes, we'll be continuing to innovate and partner with banks, and our banks in that time frame. Many of the banks that we'll be implementing over the next 2 years will be greenfield digital banks. This will take a few years to accelerate their growth and get to be the Starling for their country. But yes, in 5 to 10 years, it should be a very impressive picture.
Certainly sounds like it. I do have to ask you. You mentioned that and we have established during the conversation that it's really these new market entrants, either from a completely new entrant perspective or a new brand entrant, perhaps, or a digital spin-off. But what are you thinking on incumbent banks? Is it anything that you are interested in as a customer, or what would be the conditions for you to have a conversation with the likes of Citibank or HSBC?
Well, I mean, I think we'd be happy to talk to Citibank or HSBC. Typically, the larger banks want to own that capability themselves and employ their own engineers and developers and own their futures. So that's, if they wanted a conversation, it'd be interesting. And we are talking to established banks all the time, and they don't fear us. Replatforming isn't something that we're steering clear of at all. In fact, I embrace it, and I think one of the things that prompted me to make the move from IBM to Engine was that I'd spent the last 20 years talking to senior bankers about their technology problems, and they've been through various flavors of this. Where you don't want to do a core banking implementation, it's like doing a heart and lung transplant at 30,000 feet. To the future is renovation and hollowing out the core, and then people start that, and you never know when it's going to finish. And still the problem persists of these extremely complex legacy estates, that even the regulator's view of change is, look, just don't touch it. It's an interesting topic, because Starling Bank has been on a journey of having to reassure the regulator about the way we control change, the way we manage releases, the way we use chaos engineering to bring down servers live in production. All of this is a different world to that of of banks that still have to manage these legacy estates. And one of the one of the things that I heard when I was talking to these people was, talking to senior executives, was, well, we would love to make the move to something modern and cloud native, but these are young organizations, they're not proven, it's just a step too far for us. Along comes Starling Bank, who's got 3 million retail customers, 500,000 business accounts, has never had a reportable outage, and is very profitable. So the organizational concerns should take a backseat, and it's more a technical question of, well, okay, what are the technical risks in a migration? My view is that with a nice complete target, that we can create that target solution very quickly, and the problem then reduces to a migration issue. And as Paul knows, there are organizations out there that have done many bank migrations very successfully, and that is not it's not a trivial exercise, but it's also nothing that should be feared if it's done well.
That's a really fascinating proposition. I would be really happy to see some of the real incumbent banks pull the trigger on something like this in scale. That would be a wonderful thing to observe, at least, if nothing else.
I think realistically, the way they'll go about it is, if you look at what Intesa are doing with Thought Machine, let's start a new brand, start a new proposition, and over time grow that and retire the old. But I'm sure there'll be different flavors of it. I do like to think, though, that having this kind of proposition that's more complete, that's proven as a target state, reduces the fear around replatforming significantly.
Yeah, certainly. The saying on our podcast is that time flies when you're having fun, and we have definitely had an interesting conversation so far today, and we learned a lot about Starling Engine and Starling Bank as well. Is there anything we didn't cover yet that you still wanted to talk about before we round it off, Nick?
I don't know. I don't think so. Well, actually, I'll tell you one little observation just on the theme of replatforming. And it only really occurred to me after I joined Starling Bank, and I don't have any facts on this, but I would bet money that the electricity consumption of Starling Bank is a minute fraction of the electricity consumption of any equivalent bank of that scale. And as an ESG agenda topic, the electricity that you have to consume running large data centers with hundreds of systems and difficult integration with electrons doing all sorts of redundant journeys, compared to a single cloud native system where the bank's cloud bill is very, very reasonable. If that's a proxy for how much carbon is a bank putting into the atmosphere, I think there's a very powerful case for change to grasp the nettle of replatforming.
100%. Just looking forward to banks having actual reporting requirements when it comes to electricity consumption and CO2 emissions on that level. I'm sure this is our future in one way or the other, regardless. So people are able to make better decisions about where they bank, for example. So that's a good point to end on. Paul, did you want to add something or ask something before we round it off?
Ask something, no, but add something. Sold. I'm actually really impressed. I came into this with some good understanding of Engine and Starling. I mean, sitting in my role and doing all this Fintech Daydreaming, Starling has been one of the things we've talked about in the past quite a lot. You've really opened my eyes on what is Engine from Starling, what comes with it. I really like the fact that it is, I hate to use the term bank in a box, but it is a bank in a box, but very modular, very flexible, as you state in it. I think, if Ville and I were honestly going to go, and obviously with a different brand now that you've told us that Fintech Daydreaming is the worst idea for a brand of a bank, I would seriously consider using Starling Engine. So thank you, Nick. It's been a real eye-opener.
Yeah. So where do we sign? That's the question. Good. But hey, our listeners will want to know, Nick, how can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about Starling Engine and Starling Bank and all the good stuff we talked about today?
Well, we have a website. It needs to be beefed up, but yeah, all our contact details are there. Nick.Drewett@starlingbank.com. So be very happy to talk to people.
Great. And if you Google Starling Engine, don't click the first link again. It is the Starling Engine. It's a different fascinating story for another time.
I'll tell you to Google Engine by Starling.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. There you go. You heard it here. Good. But thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on. A fantastic conversation once again. And we learned a lot about Starling Engine and how to run a new type of a bank from a cloud native perspective. Again, dear listeners, we do this for free until we start the bank at least. And that means that the only thing we ask from you is that you click like, hit subscribe, leave us a comment, leave us a review, tell your friends to listen in, and please share on the social media as we publish these episodes. Again, me and Paul would like to thank you, and we will see you next time. This has been Fintech Daydreaming.
This is Fintech Daydreaming.